Good evening, my friends. I want to give you this little rundown of how to build self trust. So, this is definitely a how to. So, to start, um, all the reasons why you should trust yourself. So, the first one is your sovereignty. And this one, I'm not going to create like a full argument for it because that would take too much time. But part of this is realizing your true nature. So when I say sovereignty, part of what I mean is a brain rewiring perspective where you understand that your choices collect in your mind and create neuronal pathways. So everything that you are, you have created. And for most of us, about 95% of our day and our lives is run on subconscious programming. So our free will and our sovereignty is really based in our ability to choose our subconscious programming. That's really all it is. So we get to decide what that 95% is, which requires that we're willing to do the work to reprogram our entire brain to what we want to believe. And therein lies our health, our well being, our freedom, our potential, our happiness, all of it. So, when I say your sovereignty, that's what I mean. And part of that's recognizing your true nature. So that means, so think of it this way, like when you were a baby, because a lot of times we think of like, we think that our power, it's often that we think our power and our authority or our efficacy, like how good we are at things or why we're trustworthy, comes from like our intellectual ability to do something or our physical ability to do something, willpower, things like that. That's not it. Really, where your sovereignty comes from is the reality of who you are. So think of it this way. You were born, you were a baby, right? And you've lived your whole life up till now. And what is the thing that's you? Between the time when you were the sweet little giggling baby and whatever stage of adulthood you're at now, like what's the same? What's the essence? And that's really your sovereignty comes from your essence, who you are, your true nature. There is an intelligence inside of you that doesn't rely on your brain but informs your brain. So that's what I mean when I say your sovereignty. So think of like, children, babies are designed to, their brains are developing so quickly, but they're already intelligent, they're already communicative, they're already worthy, they're learning, they're growing, they're thinking, they're experiencing the world. There's just such there's an intelligence and a wisdom that comes through babies that I think we lose touch with when we're adults. And that's what you're re-establishing a connection to when you establish a connection with your sovereignty. That's part of it. So, the other thing with this is to like look back at your life and think about, when have things worked for me? And usually the answer to that is when I wasn't overthinking and I wasn't trying too hard and I was trusting the flow of life and I just kind of let things happen. That's usually the answer to that question. So that's a couple of like arguments for how that presence, that there is an intelligence within you, that there is an aspect of you that doesn't depend on your physical body, that doesn't depend on your brain, that's constant through your entire life. That's really you more than anything else, because that's the part that makes you you from the time that you're, your whole span of your life. So that's one part, is to connect with that and realize that that's where you're building this new life from. That's what you're doing, is coming from this place of recognizing, okay, I have control over my brain and body. I'm sovereign over myself. And it may take time to build that, but that's the reality, is that you create yourself from your choices. Or you at least co-create yourself from your choices. So that's the first part of sovereignty. The second part is action. So this part is a little bit more simple. It's just about making small commitments to yourself that you can keep. And this is very, very small. And this is something I really recommend to people who are just beginning a program and they're feeling really overwhelmed and get frustrated. They try to implement the whole thing And they just end up feeling frustrated and overwhelmed because it's so many different things, and then you don't do it all right, and then you feel bad that you didn't do it all, and then that just kind of creates this pattern of frustration and disappointment in yourself, which just compounds the negative emotion, and you see where this is going. So when I say small things, that's right, where you want to pick something. And when I do coaching, I usually help people pick by talking to them and asking them questions like what to start with, what's going to be most effective. But the bottom line is just pick one thing that you know is good for you. And it could be something as simple as it could literally be something as simple as eating breakfast or eating lunch or taking a shower. Or, if you're doing DNRS, for example, doing one round, or if you're doing Gupta, doing one meditation or something like that, just picking one thing and picking a time frame. So for this week or for the next 3 days, I would pick a longer time frame because you want to really build that consistency. But whatever works for you, for today, whatever it is you need to do, pick a time frame and commit to doing that one thing every day, and picking it by a certain time can be helpful because otherwise we tend to, the limbic system can push us off if we're in recovery from limbic impairment, or if you have a pattern of procrastination. Committing to doing something by noon is really helpful so that you don't leave it till midnight. But that's it. That just builds trust with yourself because your brain needs to see especially your limbic system, your emotional center, the young part of your brain needs to see that you are reliable and that you can show up and you can commit and you can be there for yourself, that you can be a stable ground for yourself. So you can rely on yourself. You can be independent. You can have that self-reliance. So that's the second one, is action. The third thing is examine your belief system and choose beliefs that align. And I'm going to give an example for this, just a really basic one. This is something that, again, I would go much more in depth with coaching, but I'll just share, one small example for me. So when I started DNRS, the reason I was so ill was that one of the core reasons was I believed in a God who, the God of my religion who wanted me to suffer. And that's when I saw where that led me, and a lot of this is okay, you pick beliefs based on where it takes you to. So your beliefs create an outcome. I believed in a God that wanted me to suffer. I was suffering. I was looked at my situation and I was I don't believe in a God who wants this for people. That's really, I don't believe in that. I just don't. So whoever, whatever this is, that's not what I believe in. And that was, a lot of my religious beliefs were tied up in my limbic impairment. So it was really important for me to change my belief of what God I believed in, what kind of God I believed in order to feel like I was allowed to recover. So I chose to believe in a God that gives life. And that changed everything. And that informed all of my choices. A God that gives life to my body. A God that gives life to my relationships. A God that gives life to my heart and soul, to my spirit. That's the God I chose to believe in. And that has informed every single other belief I have created. Another one for me was I got this from the Bible because that's my upbringing and my background was the story in the Gospels where Jesus says, you'll know them by your fruit. So I was saying, okay, well, everything I'm going to judge it by, does it work? Because I don't really care about whether or not I'm right or wrong. I care about recovering. I care about living a full life. I care about the bottom line. I care about actually feeling alive and feeling good and healing. I couldn't care less about, concepts and, arguing right and wrong. I was I just want, if it works, I believe in it. Done. I trust what works. So those are some of the things, for me, where I've changed my belief system instead of, running everything through a logic algorithm or checking and seeing if the early church fathers approved of it or if, I don't know, if it's woke or it's just whatever. I was no, if it works, I'll take it. If it doesn't work, I'm going to find something that does because I'm done with the suffering. So that's an example of examining your belief system and choosing beliefs that align. And then once you pick kind of a couple core beliefs like that, you can kind of, as you're picking new patterns, you can line them up with the core beliefs that you've chosen and say, do they align? Does this match? Does it work? Does it fit with, I believe in things that bring me life, that bring life to my body, my heart, etc. So that kind of goes actually into the last thing, which is build a strong connection to your true self. And this one's very neurologically based. So in terms of brain rewiring, it's okay. So back up a little bit, but so part of most recovery programs for anything. And even if you're not in recovery, really just building a rich life, you want to pursue experiences of joy, of calm, of flow, of laughter, of awe and gratitude and love and beauty. Like those experiences are core at what nourishes our heart and soul and makes us feel like life is worth living, like that makes us feel that we're fulfilled, that makes us feel like there's a purpose to everything. It connects us to this mystery of why we're all here, which gives you context and meaning for your life, which is really important and motivating. So that's what I call your true self. When you're in those experiences, that's what I consider the most authentic self. The most true self is found within those experiences. You connect to something and you can't exactly explain what it is, but everything feels right when you're in that space. So pursue those experiences, and that's going to create a neurology and a habit. And like, so the more you practice an experience, the stronger the wires for that experience become. There's more of them. It's like that marble on the top of the hill. You drop the marble on top of the hill, it goes down, and the groove gets deeper. So you want to build really deep grooves of all of those experiences, positive emotion, and not just, like all positive emotion and all authentic emotion too, which is at this point you want to aim for positive. And then affirm your trust in this aspect of yourself. So this was one thing I did for a long time in my recovery, was I would say things like, I trust my natural joy. Like I trust, that thing that just happens when I'm still and I'm not thinking, and when I see a flower, and when my child smiles at me, or when I just come back to the present moment and notice the colors of what are around me. There's just this natural radiance that kind of comes to our heart space. There's this natural calm that comes when we drop out of our heads and we're not overthinking, we're not thinking at all, we're just present. There's just that's your essence. That's again kind of back to that sovereignty. Like that's what you are. That's the essence of, that's your deepest, truest, most lasting part of you that's steady over the course of your life. So it really helps to say, I trust calm, I trust my calm, I trust my joy, I trust my higher self. And this is a big one. I trust my benevolence, because a lot of times the limbic system, this is a whole other topic I won't get into right now, but a lot of us have core shame, where we feel like we are bad at our core. When we've had childhood trauma, when we've had when we're when we're in recovery, or we're really we're having a lot of negative patterns in life, and if you're not in recovery from something, a lot of times there's this feeling of shame that we exist, of shame that we're here, or that we're not worthy, or we don't trust ourselves because we, in the past, when we were less mature, we didn't have as much knowledge, we hurt people we loved, we made poor decisions, and then our limbic system and our subconscious mind and our very primitive brain can come to believe that we aren't good, that we don't have good intentions, that we are maliceful, or that we are malevolent. And so it's very important to affirm that at your essence, again, like when you look at that sweet baby, that you are benevolent. Your inherent nature is to be benevolent, unless, again, you are being run by trauma or you're threatened, in which case we're animals like any other animal. That protective mechanism is going to come in. But that's not who you are, and you have power over it. So your core, again, identifying who you are with that part of you that's consistent over the course of your life more than anything else, saying that part of me is benevolent. So I trust that I'm benevolent, so that your limbic system can really feel that sense of this benevolent, mature presence with yourself. So it's like, oh, okay, there's a grown-up here who has good intentions and loves me and is caring and has, it really means well. That's really powerful. So, and part of the purpose of practicing that neurology a lot is when you come up against, so this is the follow-up for self-sabotage, when you're changing self-sabotage. So regardless of where you're at in your recovery, the more you practice this and the more you affirm those things, the more your limbic system's going to trust you, that you mean well with the changes you're making, and the less it's going to resist. And especially when you're making big changes, the more you practice that healthy neurology, it's like the more familiar that gets, because the limbic system loves familiar. We as human beings, we love what's familiar. It's so comfortable. So the more comfortable and the more familiar you make those positive emotional states, when you're changing pretty big patterns in your life that you've had for a long time, and you're in unfamiliar territory, with you're implementing new patterns and you're doing things very differently, you have this familiar, positive, safe place to go of just practicing that joyful place of listening to your favorite music, of just enjoying a bath or taking a walk or connecting with a friend or playing with a pet or a child or coloring or whatever it is you do that you love to do, meditating, doing yoga, just as I like to do, laying on a couch and staring out the window, just whatever it is that you love to do that makes you happy or makes you calm. You have a safe place to go to that's really familiar, so that in the midst of that, because especially when you're changing core beliefs, or really any massive process of transformation, it's like the ground underneath you is being changed out. It's like you're replacing the foundation while you're living in the house, and that can be unsettling for the limbic system. So when you have kind of a cozy little gazebo, you've got like this nice little place you've built where you have those familiar pathways that are positive. You can go rest there, and that's like your it's kind of like your like ferry or your boat, from as you build the new pathways, and the thing that you travel in as you go from one place to the other, from the old belief to the new belief. And that's really powerful. It's really powerful to be able to give yourself that experience of positive, familiar when you're in massive transformation. It really helps to build trust with your limbic system, to build trust with that animalistic part of you, that you really do care for yourself when you can show up, be giving yourself that positive, familiar experience in the midst of, and again, this goes too for like massive life changes. So even in the midst of grief, even in the midst of massive life transitions, you can still have that oasis that you go to where you are connected to your true self, where you're connected to the world, where you're connected to your heart, your soul, the divine, whatever it is. And that becomes, so you're giving yourself this consistent experience of positivity and showing your limbic system, I'm showing up for myself no matter what. I'm showing up for me. So you're safe to trust me. You're safe to let go. We don't need to be in stress chemistry. We don't need to be constantly planning or worrying or thinking about the past or the future, because I'm showing you that we're safe. And this moment feels good to be in. It's comfortable to be in this moment. Oh, another big part of self-trust that I forgot to write down actually is planning for things, like stepping into that adult role when you're making life decisions, even little ones, and just making the effort to, in a very rational way, from a loving place, not from worry, to think about, okay, what repercussions is this decision going to have? What would be a good decision for myself? How can I take into account, my sleep and my eating and my balancing my life and all of that sort of thing, so that the limbic system knows that you're playing the role of the adult, and you're actually you're looking out for every aspect of your being and your life and all the different aspects, so that it doesn't have to come in with all this worry until you take a hint and make a plan and create a pattern that feels good. So that's the other thing, is just making a plan and really covering all your bases when you're making decisions in your life, from little to big, but from a place of love and sovereignty and maturity and genuine concern for your own well-being, instead of fear of lack and loss or fear of negative outcomes coming from, I want good things for myself, so I'm going to make a plan to have good things. So that's sovereignty, action, creating a coherent belief system, building a strong connection to your true self, and then just basic planning ahead, covering your bases when you're making decisions. That is your kind of run through of how to build trust with yourself, so that you can move away from self-sabotage and create any pattern, establish any pattern you want in your life for yourself. So that's what I've got for y'all tonight. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's helpful, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Mwah!